One of the first shows I can remember watching that was not explicitly for children was the original Teen Titans. I must have been 4 or 5 or so. And it made an impression on me. Whenever I think of what superhero TV shows should be like, what they can be at their best, Teen Titans is one of the first things I think of. Obviously, the show was directed at a younger audience to an extent, but not in the same way as, say, Clifford the Big Red Dog or something like that. That is explicitly kid-focused, or even Pokemon or something like that. Teen Titans was, or at least it seemed, a bit edgy, a bit dark, not scary necessarily, but serious. Felt like it mattered. It takes a lot from its great predecessors on TV, such as Batman the Animated Series, with which it shares a love of this kind of noir lighting and this almost German expressionist love of these sharp, jagged angles. But it also draws quite a bit of anime, which was just starting to become quite popular in the West by this time, by the early 2000s. It was still very niche. There were, of course, anime like Pokemon that were very big for children, but if you were an adult or even a teenager watching anime in the United States, you were very much on the edges of things in a way that is not nearly as true today. So Teen Titans took a lot of inspiration from these various sources and fused it together into a show that is remembered quite fondly. There was quite a controversy when the vastly inferior, distinctly kiddie Teen Titans Go came out and kind of mocked and parodied these characters, and there was genuine bitterness among a faction of people because they genuinely cared about those characters and about that world. And I think there's still quite a appreciation for the show today, not to the same extent as something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but still quite strong. And I think there is a lot that can be said about the place of the show in the history of modern TV animation, and also in the superhero genre, which was not nearly as prevalent as it is now. Superhero shows have always existed, of course. They've existed as long as TV has existed. Meaning you start getting these shows in the 50s, and especially the 60s. The Adam West live-action but very cartoony Batman is the first thing that comes to mind. But the 90s were not exactly the best decade for superheroes, and the renaissance of all these superhero figures doesn't really get started until you get the Spider-Man movies, the original ones. You get the Nolan Batmans, and then in the latter part of the 2000s into the 2010s is when Marvel really starts to take over. So Teen Titans is something that exists right on the cutting edge of that, right when superheroes are starting to become cool again. And it helps that the show is just really good. The character writing is strong. The relationships between the characters are very deeply felt. The world in which they live feels alive and vivid. It's a quintessentially urban world. This is one thing that I don't think is appreciated enough about superheroes as a genre, is that it is fundamentally an urban genre. Not exclusively, but there's a reason You don't really think of superheroes running around the rural fields of Missouri. Even Superman, who is from Kansas, attains his fame and success among the humans in Metropolis, which is, well, a metropolis. Batman, you have Gotham City. Spider-Man is just a New Yorker. Spider-Man has evolved significantly, but in basically every incarnation, he is basically the emblematization of a young working-class New Yorker. And Teen Titans depicts this urban milieu very well. Charles Baudelaire, the great documenter of modern city life, discusses the urban environment as being one that is characterized by constant flux and impermanence. Nothing is constant. You take a picture of a street corner one day, and then you come back the next day, it's going to be somewhat different. The people are going to be different, and as a result, it's going to feel somewhat different. People aren't completely connected, and they don't all know each other in the way you'd see in a small town. There is a kind of anonymity to the big city, and yet at the same time a kind of endless potentiality. And you feel that for a show like this. There are these larger arcing stories, and the emphasis on slightly more serialized storytelling does come more from anime. That's very much this anime influence. But at the same time, there are a lot of character of the day stories, a lot of episodic slice of life storytelling that's done well. And a lot of that owes to how effectively it uses this urban milieu as a place where everything is a bit unpredictable and anything can happen, any variety of stories can unfold. And yet the show retains its organic core because of the relationship between these characters. The show's idea of Robin is still the definitive one for me. And I think when you mention characters like Raven or Starfire, Beast Boy, people remember them fondly because these are well-written, well-articulated characters. This isn't Tolstoy. They're not absolute masterpieces, but they're done well and done thoughtfully, and that's really all that a show like this really needs. And as importantly, it's done sincerely. And I think that is something that is somewhat missing from the current era of superhero storytelling. And people feel that. A lot of these big movies feel hollow, not simply because they're overloaded with special effects, though they are, and to a certain extent even some of the TV shows are. TV shows can, at their best, be more about just the writing and less about these big flashy special effects, but sadly more and more TV shows are just these multi-part movies that kind of don't get the best parts of either medium, TV shows or film. And as importantly, a lot of these superhero shows are just kind of empty because no one takes them seriously. You can't expect people to take something seriously if it doesn't take itself seriously. And yes, there have been a lot of very funny, lighthearted superhero shows and movies going back to the Adam West Batman, but those are a bit different, I would say, because they're making fun of a lot of things, they're lighthearted, but not at the expense of the heart of the thing. Adam West deeply cares about this character and wants to do him justice. He's not making fun of the ridiculous costuming like you would see in a lot of Marvel movies. And Teen Titans has that same degree of earnestness. It can be a bit silly sometimes, but it always approaches that silliness with a real sense of sincerity. Not over seriousness. It's not super glum like some Batman material can get. But there is a degree that this matters, that what they're doing matters, that the relationships between the characters matter. And that is one reason why I really view this, along with Avatar: The Last Airbender, as being the start of a certain golden age of TV animation that ran from about the early 2000s to a couple years ago, the early 2020s, with the ending of something like The Owl House and Amphibia, I'd say. Just the idea that anime influence can and should be taken and used without being ruthlessly copied, and it should be mixed with a degree of real sincerity and real care. A bit of humor, but genuine pathos all the way around. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can. You want to see more videos just like this one before anyone else. Keep watching the show. Go rewatch it if you haven't lately. It's a very good show. Take care, everyone. Adios, comrades.